Welcome to a story that lives beyond clocks and crowns. Love so infinite that even time, the silent ruler of all things, bows in reverence before it. When Sheikh Hamdan loved, he did not just love within the boundaries of a day or a lifetime. He loved as though eternity were his witness. His heart became a sanctuary where her name was written not in ink, but in light. It was a love that defied reason, outlasted seasons, and whispered softly to the stars that some souls are born only to find each other. He had seen the world in its grandest form, deserts that stretched like oceans, skies that blazed with royal sunsets, yet nothing compared to the quiet miracle of her smile. When she entered his life, she didn't change his world, she completed it. Time, which once ruled his every step, began to pause around her. Every second stretched into forever when she was near, and every minute apart felt like centuries unending. For the first time, the prince who commanded time found himself humbled by love. Her presence was not loud, but it was powerful. She did not arrive like a storm, she came like dawn, steady, golden, inevitable. Her silence spoke what 1,000 poets could not describe. When she looked at him, he felt the universe surrender its weight, and his soul, burdened by duty, found its freedom. Love, he realized, was not something to be owned, it was something to be worshipped. And in that sacred devotion, time itself became their most loyal servant. He wrote about her endlessly, not because he wanted the world to know her, but because he wanted her to live forever. His poetry became her portrait, his verses her legacy. "If time forgets my name," he once said, "it will still remember hers, for she is the reason my words breathe." The pages he filled were not meant for readers. They were confessions to the heavens, promises whispered between two souls that refused to part, no matter how many lifetimes came and went. There were moments when he sat beneath the desert sky, the moon hanging like a soft witness above him, and he could almost hear her heartbeat through the stars. The night, to him, was not dark, it was illuminated by memory. Every breeze carried a trace of her perfume, every grain of sand seemed to hold her name. He realized then that love, true love, does not need touch or presence to exist, it needs only belief. And his belief in her was infinite. Time tried to test them, as it does all who love deeply. There were distances, silences, and days that stretched longer than years. But each challenge only proved their devotion's strength. She waited without complaint, he wrote without pause. They met in the space between longing and faith, where souls recognize each other beyond time's fragile design. When the world thought they were apart, their hearts were still holding hands beneath the same sky. He often said that love is not measured by moments but by echoes, and her love echoed in everything he did. In his leadership, there was tenderness, in his solitude, there was grace. Her influence lived in his every decision, her calmness in his every word. The world saw a ruler, she saw a man made of softness and fire, of courage and vulnerability. She was not his shadow, she was his light. When he looked at her, he saw his eternity. The ticking of clocks faded, the rush of the world dimmed, and everything else became background to the music of her existence. "She is my stillness," he whispered once to the wind, and through her, "I have learned the language of forever." Those words, carried through his poetry, became a legend, not of royalty, but of devotion that outlived its own story. Her love taught him patience, gentleness, and faith. He began to see time not as a measure of years but as a river that always led back to her. Even in her absence, he felt her in the rhythm of his heartbeats, in the pauses between his verses, in the quiet sighs of the night. She became both his muse and his miracle. The world often spoke of his achievements, his poems, his glory, but none of it mattered to him as much as her smile. She was the chapter that defined his book, the melody behind his silence. When people asked why his poetry always carried the scent of longing, he smiled and said, "Because my heart writes where my hands cannot reach." In that sentence lived the entire truth of their story, love untouchable by time's cruel hands. In the secret chambers of his heart, he built her an empire. No walls, no guards, no golden thrones, just eternal peace.
He believed that even when stars burned out and oceans turned to dust, she would still be the pulse in his poetry, the eternity in his breath. That was his promise, that devotion, when real, never dies. Sometimes, late at night, he would write her name in the sand and watch the tide erase it, smiling as he whispered, "Even the sea cannot take you from me." To him, love was not about holding on. It was about becoming one with the memory, with the dream, with the heartbeat that refuses to fade. Every sunset became a reminder that endings are only beginnings wearing a disguise. And so, even as years passed, their love did not age, it evolved. It became the kind of story that poets envy and stars remember. It was not about what they had, but what they became through love, two souls molded by devotion, crowned not by titles but by eternity. In his final verses, he wrote, "She was my now, my always, and my forever, and even time, the proudest ruler of all, bowed to her name." Yet even eternity, in its silence, envied what they had. The heavens watched as he loved her through every breath, through every dawn that broke over Dubai's golden skyline. When he rode through the desert at sunrise, his heart galloped with the memory of her laughter. The sand shimmered as if it remembered her footsteps, and the wind carried her voice, soft and sacred. He was no longer just a poet writing of love. He had become love itself, wrapped in longing, burning with faith. Time could only watch, powerless before the fire of two souls destined to be one. There were nights when he stood beneath the moon, whispering to it like an old friend. "Tell her I still write," he'd say softly, "tell her my words still breathe her name." And the moon, as if in loyalty, would glow brighter, sending its light across distant seas where she rested her heart upon the same sky. Though miles separated them, their love needed no bridge. It existed beyond reach, beyond touch, beyond the fragile limits of the world. It was not love made of promises, it was love made of souls. His devotion became a prayer woven into every act of kindness, every poem shared with the world. The people who read his words felt something sacred, not just romance, but